everybody. This is Rory Francis, and you're watching another segment of Igniting American Manufacturing. Happy New Year. Welcome back. And today I have a returning guest, a three-time returning guest, Terry Iverson. Terry?
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
Thank you, Rory.
Terry, I'm glad you're in town and you made time to come speak to us, and never had to think about it twice. Started writing a list here of things to talk about. And I started scratching out because I can just, fill this book here. I do want to touch on, and you have a great story, and you do touch so many things. I want to talk about the Iverson family.
Okay.
And Iverson family business. And I know, because you've told me before, your grandfather is in manufacturing. This would have been his 100. Iverson family has been involved in manufacturing for 100 years this year. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. It's actually, there's two families. It's the Iverson and Turnstrom family. And my grandmother was a Turnstrom. And of course, my grandfather was an Iverson. And the two of them set out my grandfather in 1925, and then the Turnstrom family came in probably 5-10 years later. And so we're cousins and et cetera. But it's been my dad, my grandfather, my dad, my uncles, my cousins. So there's a long, very wide net of family that's been in the industry this will be the 100th year.
Okay, I want to give us some perspective, but your grandfather was in the business for 40 years.
Approximately, yeah.
Okay, and your dad 40 years.
Correct.
And you had to outdo him. You did 44 years?
Technically, I don't know that I would ever say I outdid either my dad or my grandfather in any way, but I at least tried to, put in as many as I could, and 44 was about what I could do.
That's a long, lengthy career, and then you've gone on to some wonderful things to help people since then. But I actually want to put this in historical perspective. 1925, Depression was just a few years down the road.
Correct. Yes.
Surviving that as a business is fairly tough, and I know your grandfather was working for someone for a few years and then set out
He was.
During the Depression or right after? Or?
Well, what happened was in 1925, he started basically, and it's a cool story, sweeping floors. And his dad had passed away, my great-grandfather, who was the original immigrant to come from Norway. And so he had brothers and sisters, and he became the breadwinner at a very young age. I'm not even sure that he was able to finish high school, but he went to work, started sweeping floors, and all of our family's been very blessed, and we're fairly, have a good understanding of math and science. Myself, my dad, my grandfather, my uncles, and many more. So they recognized that. The company is Hardinge, which is a machine tool company, and they were located in Chicago. So they were bought out by a smaller or a larger company called Morrison Machine Products in New York, Elmira, New York. And so they closed the business in Chicago and moved it, and they invited 3 people to go with, which my grandfather was one of them. And so he was supporting his brothers and sisters and his mom, and he said, I can't just pick up and leave. I got to stay put. So he asked if he could represent them in the market that they originally were in, which was Chicago. And they said, yeah. And so that's how the story started.
Okay. And Depression was a tough time. It seems like he navigated it pretty well. So yeah, 100 years. I mean, so next thing you know, we're onset of World War II. We're using small factories to supply to the government.
Yep.
We come into this economic boom post-war, and things are very, very healthy. And here comes the 70s, and we start offshoring. And
correct.
A lot of small manufacturers were pushed out and chose to close their doors. You guys navigated that.
There's a lot of things that both my father and my grandfather went through. I mean, during the World War time, the equipment that we were selling and that the manufacturer was making was very, very precise. So a lot of very, very accurate munitions and defense-related items were made on those machines. So they navigated through that, and there was a little bit of a boom because the equipment was as accurate as it was. And then going forward, I came in about 1980, and we were just starting to get into computerization in terms of the machine tools. So we had gone into automatics, which were microswitch controlled and hydraulically fed. And that was a big move. But 1978, 79, and 1980 was NC, which is numerical control, point-to-point programming, and then CNC, which is computerized numerical control. And that being said, there was a lot of companies that, we went through the 83 recession, which was pretty hard on everybody, and I was a part of trying to navigate that as a young married person, my wife and myself. But during that time, a lot of companies didn't make it, and a lot of manufacturing left this country. And if it wasn't for, in about 1995, I met Harry Mosier, and I started speaking to young people in schools and talking about manufacturing careers. We both come from a machine tool background, from the equipment side, the capital equipment side. And so he got me speaking to young people, but as you well know, you had Harry as a guest, he founded the reshoring movement, which in the mid-90s, to try to bring people back into this country. And when I met Harry, he inspired me, and I said, Harry, it's great that you're bringing people back to this country to make equipment, but we need a whole generation, and have lost several, at least 1 or 2 generations for the manufacturing sector. We need to bring them in, and we need to let people know that we still do manufacturing in this country. And that's when I started Champion Now, and that was in about 2012.
Well, 78, 79, I mean, those are bad years. That was, almost, you can drop a pin and say offshoring started in 79. That's where the date is and stuff. So you're coming in 1980. That's navigating. I've had Dan D'Amico with Nucor on, and he was the chairman. He's chairman emeritus now, and he started Coalition for Prosperous America. And Nucor, while a lot of the steel industry and Bethlehem Steel were closing their doors and packing up, and things were going overseas, and Intel was sending stuff overseas. Nucor and maybe Micron up in Boise, they somehow managed to navigate. Those are big companies. Those are big companies that somehow, this misnomer that it's all about the cost of labor. They somehow were efficient enough to offset that they would manage to stay there. How did Iverson, a small company, and you were at peak, how many employees?
Well, at the latter part of my career, we were around 15. The highest we were was about 30, 31.
31.
But 20 was a good number for us for a long time.
So companies are packing up. Asian companies are undercutting us in price and machining, and they're going overseas. Where was the wherewithal in the Iverson family? Is it something in your genes that you guys just stuck to it and said, we're staying here and doing it? What's the differentiator here?
Well, one of the things that people have said is that I'm almost loyal to a fault. And I'm loyal to our manufacturing base in this country. I'm loyal to U.S.-made products. And the one thing my dad taught me, and he was really, really good at, he passed away about 3-4 years ago, but he was really good at what is a common word today, wasn't a common word years back, and that is pivoting, or reinventing yourself, or reinventing the company, and adapting. And he was really good at that. My dad had a lot of medical problems. He was a walking medical marvel in his own right. But he learned physically that he had to pivot and adapt because of his limitations with his health. And he took that into the corporate environment, into the company, and he taught all his employees, and certainly his son and his other children, that that's one of the biggest gifts and the biggest talent and skill sets you can have, is realizing the situation that you're in and adapting and succeeding in that. And that was a big part of it.
If you're running a company, that's pretty much a necessary skill if you're going to run it successfully. I applaud you. Like I said, Micron, when folks, they make, some of the lower end flash chips back in the day, and a lot of manufacturers couldn't do it, couldn't make the margins they need to stay here, and they chose to go over. But somehow, something they did was different, And Nucor, pivoted a lot. You know, they started off as a rebar company. Well, they're not a rebar company anymore. And they're actually, right now, they pivoted again. They're kind of more of a recycling company when it comes to steel.
Yeah.
So they made a conscious decision. Micron made a conscious decision. Nucor and Dan DeMico's group, they made a conscious decision that they were going to stay here. And, you know, it's easy to behoove or talk about the cost of American labor, but, you know, that's just one piece of it, you know. And so, you know, the loyalty to the U.S., the loyalty to their employees and keep it home. It's hard. You know, cutting wages or getting cheap labor is a real fix quick. Quick fix. And it's easy to turn that knob, but, you know, it's not always necessary. I don't believe it's as necessary as people make it to be. And we have to figure that out. So, like you said, Harry Moser has the reshoring initiative, and with the CHIP Act and digital sovereignty and worry about critical minerals, we are reshoring. But, you know, and the cost of labor in China specifically has gone up 3x in the past 10 years, but it's still 50% of ours.
Right.
So they're beating us on wages by 50%. So we need to find a way to be more efficient, to optimize our factories, and to figure that out. So it's still important, you know, if we're going to be competitive. And I think the EU's in the same boat, you know. So we talk about that quite a bit. I'm going to move on.
Okay.
And so, you know, what Iverson, you know, what your family did and your firm did is just applaudable. And like I said, you know, 100 years of dedication to the community, you know, and provide, that's pretty neat stuff. And you guys should be.
One thing I'd like to point out is that we were always very, very lucky and fortunate to have very good employees and very loyal employees. My dad always invested in education and training. And, you know what? I'd be remiss if I didn't say, if it wasn't for them, you know, at the top, when you're leading a company, you can make decisions, but those decisions are only decisions and only go so far without people following and actually doing what needs to be done. So we were very, very fortunate to have very good employees. So
that's awesome. Good employees, I mean, they're a key. Good employees stay with good employers too, so there's some credit to be done there. What you said about training and giving people opportunity, that is probably more important today. My last guest I had on, and we talked about this a little bit, we had a gentleman on here, and he presented some numbers from a survey. It was very, very interesting. I actually saw him present, and he spoke at the First Coast Manufacturing Association. And one of the numbers he presented, it was when they looked at what employees are looking for, wages for the first time was not number one. It wasn't number two. It wasn't number 3 or 4, it was number 5. And what employees were looking for more than anything was opportunity and upward mobility. And number 2 was training. You know, and in the digital age and with digital transformation and things changing as rapidly are, you know, lifelong learning is a necessity for this generation entering the workforce today. It's estimated, you know, I had someone else on here too, that most people have 4.3 job career changes. You know, they might be with the same firm, but they're going to be doing something different. That's the new norm.
Sure.
You know, so it's continuous learning, continuous upskilling. So, you know, it sounds like your dad was a man ahead of his time. So.
Oh, in many ways, for sure.
So you just touched on a little bit. Before you actually retired, you started, and then since then you've really focused more on it. Champion Now.
Correct.
Don't make me mess up this acronym. I'm going to let you do it.
Okay, it's an acronym. It's the longest acronym ever. Change how American manufacturing is perceived in our nation. And the now is to do something about it. So I started it in 2012. Harry was a big part of getting me to that point. And I decided in 2012 to actually, you know, officially establish it as a 501c3. And so what I spent the next 12 years after that doing was trying to lay down products that would give credibility and credence to the organization. And we have a really rock solid board of directors, very talented people from around the country. who I'm very fortunate to have their guidance and support. And now what I'm doing, and I started at IMTS this year, IMTS 2024, is reach out to the industry and say, look, I need you to financially, help carry some of the load so we can start doing some of the things that we're doing. So I started with the 2 books, which you and I've talked about.
I'm going to get into those for sure.
We will.
I want to.
We will. And then from there, during COVID, I did 22 educational videos during COVID. And then I started a scholarship when my dad passed that I hope to have the scholarship set up at his old high school as a memorial to my dad. My dad and both my uncles went to the same high school in Chicago called Taft High School. So my hope is to have the scholarship program reside there. And then I started Camp Champ in summer of 2023. And now we went in the fall of 2024, so we have 2 successful seasons with that. And so I hope to offer Camp Champ, obviously the champ and champion acronym designation.
All right, let's start that. Camp Champ.
Camp Champ.
Throwing tongue twisters at me. Camp Champ.
Yep.
What goes on there? What happens there?
So Camp Champ, my oldest son and I came up with the concept that we needed tabletop CNC machines to really inspire young people about manufacturing. And so I decided that we would start with a lathe and a mill, and we would turn pens, pen segments. So you have a top and a bottom to the pen. And then we would mill a case so that the pens can go in the case, and then we would laser engrave names on a plate and put it on the case. And so what we decided to do is have middle school kids mentored. Mentoring is a big thing in my life, and I try to mentor as often as I can. You and I have talked about that. And so we use high school CTE students, manufacturing or engineering students, to mentor the middle school kids. And we try to have the middle school and the middle school feeds into the high school, so that it's a direct path into a future program for them. And so then we have industry we bring in and technical colleges that we have a part of it as well. So we have a path from 12 years old to 65 years old, within one community, a local community. And so what we're trying to do is we set up 6 stations, and we have 6 different high school students at each station. And then we have 4 middle school, in groups of 4, middle school students in each station, and then they rotate in these different manufacturing processes. So you have turning, you have milling, laser engraving, you have sanding and staining with CNC indexing, you have assembly, and you have inspection.
So you're literally setting up a little factory.
We are.
And walking them through the process.
And what's besides the mentoring component, I'm told that the mentoring component could be a real key way that we can find our future CTE teachers, because that's a shortage in our country right now. Sure. But I'm also told that the portability of the camp, that we can take it anywhere, is also a huge component of the camp in terms of the attraction and the intrigue.
Awesome, good stuff, good stuff. So, well, they're sitting here, and they're related, and there's some tricks here. I got to be careful to do this here. Let me do this right.
Okay.
So, the student edition, inspiring champions in advanced manufacturing, discovering the path to a debt-free career. A debt-free career, that's pretty good. Student edition. Now I'm going to do this the right way.
Yep.
Okay, and I flip it over here.
Exactly.
Yep. Here you go. He's clever. Oh, took me a while. I had to practice this. Terry Iverson, inspiring champions in advanced manufacturing, discovering a debt-free career. Parents edition. Why is a parents edition important?
Well, what's important, first of all, we have those of us in the industry and those of us in education have little or no path to the parent. It's just the way it is. And so what I try to do, Rory, is that we can inspire the young people with this camp and get them all excited about how cool manufacturing is, and make the connection, the digital connection between manufacturing and, say, gaming. I think there's a huge connection between gaming and those who game and manufacturing. But we can get them all excited, but unless they can go home to mom and dad and say, I learned something cool about manufacturing. I want to study it. I want to go into that career. You have to have the facts, the figures, and the inspiration to give to mom and dad, because they don't know. If the child doesn't know, they come to our camp and they get a little inkling of inspiration of, this is something that I'm really interested in. Well, if we've given the kids some of the inspiration, but if we don't give the parents the data, the reasons why, the inspirational stories, they're going to say, no, you're not going into manufacturing. Everything's being sent to China. There's no future in manufacturing. And in reality, there is a future in manufacturing in this country, and there has to be, for us to be able to defend ourselves, for us to have a quality of life, for us to have a middle class. Manufacturing are the reasons for all of those, why we have all those. And so in order to prosper as a community and as a culture, we have manufacturing here. What we do as an industry, we do a poor job at advocating for those careers. And the media in general has done a poor job historically. I think that's going to change, that advocating those careers for young people coming up in the next generation.
That's the second time I heard you say that manufacturing and industry does a really bad job marketing for themselves. And it really, really is true. I think I wrote an article in my head as we sit here now. I might have to spit something back out. Yeah, I started laughing at one point. You said about manufacturing being cool, and like you said, Harry Moser's a mutual acquaintance of ours, and Harry has a uniform. And it's a blue blazer and white shirt and a red tie, and he wears it and everything. He showed up for my podcast and he had a T-shirt on. I'm scratching my head. Harry, what is it? And he stood up and he said, manufacturing's cool.
Right.
And it's something I've been saying for quite a while. And I always say I'm a geek. I walked into a factory by mistake and was asked to help out, and I never left. And I was always amazed by the technology. I was in a semiconductor plant, and I was in EV plants, and I geeked out on it, and I just thought it was super, super cool. And it's only recently I realized that, one, most kids do not think manufacturing is cool, and a greater number, 87%, slightly greater than 80% of parents think it's not cool and not where they want their children.
Right.
And there's, we're going back now over 50 years to stigma about vocational training and tech jobs and skills and trades and stuff like that. And you address that. I love the line, discover a path to a debt-free career. We could talk about that one for a while.
Well, student debt is a huge problem in our country. And when you have this best kept secret about manufacturing, where many of the employers are more than happy to pay for education for an employee or a future employee or an existing employee, and then you have people spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for a college career, and they go to the job offering, and there's sometimes dozens, sometimes hundreds of applicants they're competing against. And so in manufacturing, we don't have those numbers. We need to have those numbers. So those that show up, so to speak, and are qualified and eager to learn, they're in a good position. They're in a good spot. So I think, it's okay if manufacturing is not for certain people, because it isn't. But what's not okay is for the majority of the people not to even know about it. So if we can just get the awareness out there and change the perceptions, which is what Champion Now is all about, and probably most importantly, get to the people that we can't necessarily reach, i.e. the parents, then we can really have some significant change in our culture. And that's what it's all about. I mean, even Germany and Switzerland, whose culture is much more accepting of manufacturing and tradespeople, they're even having a tough time. Yeah. And their culture is way more receptive to skilled labor, skilled positions and trades, and manufacturing as a whole.
They run, and I'm going to run out of time, I don't want to get too into it. They run a dual track college system from tech and the other side. Two things, and when you said the stigma and the cultural, we need to shift the cultural paradigm for sure, and we got to get the parents. Manufacturing, you probably know what I'm going to say, pays 25 to 30% more than the average job in the U.S. Here's something else, and this has been coming out more, so, and I think we're starting to address it. A lot of the manufacturers, whether it's an engineering job or a tech job, are saying people are coming out of school with a degree, but they're not learning the real tangible things that they need them to. And a lot of manufacturers, Intel is working with Purdue, and ASU, and Micron is doing some things, and there's some apprenticeships, direct apprenticeships with these manufacturers, but they're talking more to the universities. And I know Florida State College here in Jacksonville is talking to manufacturers, and they're trying to get input to tailor their curriculum to real skills and real knowledge-based stuff. We're not there yet, but I think it's being acknowledged finally, and we're starting to make some inroads that, some of those degrees are, I'm not going to say worthless, but they're really expensive, and they probably could add more value. So I think that we're starting to see some collaboration along those lines, and I hope to see it grow. And I think we're making some work. What you do really helps push that.
I have an add-on to that. I was at Purdue Northwest on an advisory board, and we were talking about the difference between Europe in general and the U.S. One of the doctorate, PhD degree individuals, engineering, said, Terry, one of the stories that I've been told is that in Germany, when a print hits the floor, 80% of the time it gets made without rewrite, the actual blueprint. In the US, 80% of the time the print hits the floor and it goes back for rewrite because it can't be made or can't be made effectively. So the moral of the story, so to speak, is that in Germany and Europe in general and Switzerland, they actually engineering, because we need engineers, right? But we need engineers that have the practicality that when you design something, that it can physically be made and made cost effectively. And that can only be done if you have a true appreciation of how each process is made rather than just from an engineering perspective. And so it was a really, really poignant thought that was thrown out during this discussion we had, and it's very appropriate to share that point.
Well, I'm going to mention a company name, and I normally don't do this, and here's a company, and they're not getting the greatest press lately, and I'm mixed feelings about it, but I can tell you, I personally have sat in at Intel, constructability reviews, and with engineers, and they bring in the people who actually build it. And we do some constructability reviews. And there was another firm that was struggling a little bit with that that I worked with. And a year or two down the road, I talked to someone about constructability, and I'm like, why would we do that? We're the engineers. And a year or two down the road, they hired a design manager from Intel. And I laughed when this guy comes up to me and goes, we're doing constructability reviews now. And they're worthwhile. Engineers are great. They're smart people.
Sure they are.
But, that constructability is just like, you can draw it that way. We can't build it, and here's why.
Or you can't afford it, or you can make it.
We can build it, but it's restrictive, and we're going to have to scaffold this, or we're going to have to do this, or we're going to have, and show you why, so
Sure.
some value engineering,
No, very valid.
Well, Terry, here we go. Now, is this your first book?
That's the first one.
This is the first book. Terry Iverson, Finding America's Great Champion.
Greatest champion, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about this.
Well, go ahead and read the
Sure.
subtitle, because that's important as well.
You're picking on me with my eyes here.
That's all right, I'll do it.
They're bifocals.
Building prosperity through manufacturing, mentoring, and the awesome responsibility of parenting.
Wow, that first line's pretty powerful, but that last one, that one there, you went for it there. That's kind of a kick in the stomach. That's awesome. All right. Elaborate a little bit. Help me out here.
So when I wrote the first book, my wife had suggested that I should have separate books for each audience. And in the second book, obviously I addressed the students and parents with that book. But this book was for educators, industry, students, and parents. And then when I thought about it, a lot of the people that I interviewed and a lot of what I believe in I believe that mentoring is really critically important for success in our country. And I think good parenting and effective parenting is crucial for all of our families. And we have a little bit of an epidemic or a crisis in both mentoring and parenting in our country. And someone recently called me old school, and I'm proud to say that I am old school. But I believe in working hard. I believe in earning a paycheck and not just expecting a paycheck. And I think a lot of us old guys, so to speak, and gals, that's how we were taught. And so I think that we need to get back to that. But I also thought when I wrote the first book that if I just wrote it about just manufacturing and manufacturing only, nobody outside of manufacturing would read it. So by bringing in other people and talking about mentoring and parenting in the beliefs I have and others have, there's a certain contingent of people that will read it and then learn about manufacturing while they're also understanding what I wrote about and had other people talk about both mentoring and parenting.
So this is a series, get me right, of short stories about with people's input or their impact.
Mm-hmm. That's Harry
Conversation with Harry Moser. Okay, yeah. Harry's popping up here all over.
Yeah.
Well, he's kind of that godfather of reshoring.
He is.
Here.
No, he is the godfather.
To a lot of us.
He is.
Very sage.
He's my inspiration to do this.
Very sage gentleman he is.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to move the ball forward and help our youth and help manufacturing and our economy. So
absolutely is.
God bless him for that. The awesome responsibility of parenting without a blueprint. So read this back and cover twice, and I'm going to have to get into this one.
Okay.
Terry, again, we could go around and around and around in circles. We could talk about workforce development. We could talk about so many more things, but we're kind of out of time.
I understand.
Going to have you back on a panel.
I'll come back anytime.
We really
enjoyed
enjoyed having you on the panel last time and stuff. So
yeah, it's always awesome to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roy. I appreciate it.
This is Rory Francis, and you're watching another segment of Igniting American Manufacturing. Have a good day. Cut.